Hi, David. It's Grandpa Michael. How are you? I'm calling you today because I love you and I want you to know some things about yourself when you're older. And I'm going to tell you about my my mom's family. So my mom has had, excuse me, piece of chicken. So my mom, her name was Helen Elaine Manson, and her last name Manson came from my grandpa and grandma, actually from my grandfather. His name was Manson when he got to America, but in Greece, where he came from, it was a much longer name, and I don't know that anybody in our family right now even knows the full name, but we call well, my mom's family's name is Manson. So my grandparents come from two different parts of Europe. My grandfather comes from Greece, and my grandmother comes from Norway. She's Norwegian, and also British blood, so Scottish and Irish. And her last name, my grandmother's last name, before she got married, was McGinley, and her name was Rose. And I named my poodle Rose after my grandma. And there's Rose right there. Rose, what are you doing? Rose, say hi to David. Hi, David. Hi, Dean. So, when my grandparents came here from the old world, they came here on a ship as well, just like my father's parents. But they came through Ellis Island, and they didn't get turned away. They came right through, and they traveled halfway across the United States to a place called North Dakota, to a town named Minot, 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 North Dakota. And they went there because there were lots of Greek people that had already gone there and that had settled in that area. So even today, there are people there with the name Manson, and that are my relatives and your relatives too. So my mom was the second youngest of seven kids. Again, on that side of the family, seven. So there was my uncle James, my uncle Paul, my aunt Dorothy, Dolly, and my aunt Mary, my aunt Gina, and my mom, Helen Elaine. She was the second to the oldest, so she was almost the youngest. And her two sisters, Dolly and Dottie, my aunt Dolly and Dottie, when World War II started, well, when the United States got involved, which wasn't until 1941, they joined the Army and the Navy. My aunt Dolly joined the Army, and she was a WAC, Army WAC. And my aunt Dottie was in the Navy, and she was in the Navy Waves. And they were not in combat. They didn't fly airplanes or shoot guns, but they helped do all the things that are necessary to support our troops during World War II. So they did a lot of stuff. And they went to Europe, and they helped the soldiers, and they got them their food and their medicine and things like that. And so my grandfather he actually turned out to be a very wealthy man. He owned a restaurant and a bar in Minot, and he was very, he was famous in that town. Everybody knew him. He was a really nice guy, and he actually passed away when I was about 4 years old, so I never really got to know him at all. And my mom's mom, Rose, she passed away when I was about 3 years old. So I never got to know those two grandparents of mine, ever. Never really, I met them. My grandfather used to give me this candy that they don't make anymore. It's called Chico Sticks. And he used to give those to me all the time. I loved them. I loved him too because he was so nice to me. And anyway, he lived in a house in Sunnyvale on Pastoria Avenue. And that house was owned by my grandparents. And when they passed away, they left it to the girls of the family. And that's so that they would never, ever have to rely on a man to support them. If they needed a place to stay, they always had a place to stay. So as it turned out, my Aunt Dolly, she actually became a teacher. And she taught kindergarten and first grade in the public schools and a couple of private schools, Catholic schools in San Francisco, in the city of San Francisco. And she did that for 35 years. She was a teacher to many, many students. And my Aunt Dottie, she actually was a nurse for a long time, and she lived in that house in Sunnyvale out on Pastoria Avenue for a long, long time. And when she was young in the Army during World War II, she met this guy named Jim Jones was his name. He was a really nice guy. I remember him, but it wasn't because I knew him during World War II, because I wasn't alive yet. But they met each other and they fell in love, but they couldn't stay together because my aunt, although she loved him, she knew that he was already in a relationship with a different person. So she honored that, and she said goodbye to him. And she never got married for 35, 40 years because she loved him, and she never found anybody she loved like that. So, as it turned out, my Uncle Jim, after he said goodbye to my Aunt Dottie, he was married for many, many years, and unfortunately his wife died. And after she was gone, he remembered Aunt Dottie, and he went to find her. And they found each other, they fell in love again, and they got married. And I was about 22, 23 when they got married. And he was really a wonderful person. And my Aunt Dottie was very, very happy with him. So, in the meantime, my Aunt Gina got married to a man named Richard, and he worked for the telephone company. And my Aunt Mary got married to a man named Ray Hall, and he was a lifer in the Navy, spent 24, 25 years in the Navy. And when he got out, he started working for the ambulance company. He was an ambulance driver, and he helped people who got in car wrecks and got hurt at home or whatever. And my Uncle James, when he was in high school, he was a very, very good football player, and he got a scholarship to go to Stanford University. And he was a running back for Stanford University football team. And that's where he met his first wife, and he decided, bad choice, Uncle Jim, he decided he was going to quit school and get married. Well, I'm sure he regrets that, because he could have been a very famous football player. But he had a good time where he was doing. He was happy with his wife, and he had a couple of kids named Dennis, and I can't remember my other cousin's name's been so long. Anyway, my Uncle Paul, my mom's brother, married a lady named Claire. And so they had 3 kids: Stephen Manson, Jim, or we used to call him Jim-I Manson, and Patty Manson. And then my Aunt Mary got married, in, as I told you, to Ray Hall. They had 3 kids: Monica Hall, Mary Hall, and Raymond. and his nickname was Boats because he was his dad was in the Navy, and his mom made him a little Navy suit, and he wore it when we went to pick up his dad from coming home from the Korean War, and his name just stuck. His name was Boats. My Aunt Gina married, as I said earlier, Richard Arnold, and his son, his first son, was Ricky, or Richard Arnold. He was my best cousin ever. He was like my brother. And his brother's name was Chris, and his sister's name was Gina, after her mom, excuse me. So as it turns out, Rick and I grew up together. We learned how to golf together. We learned about a guy named Jimi Hendrix. We really liked him. He played the guitar. He's the best guitar player ever. And we played baseball together, and we did everything together. But as it turned out, when he was about, I would have to say about 62 years old, he was driving a big truck. That's what he did. He was also a mechanic and other things, but he was driving a big truck up in Idaho. And one night they saw his truck on the side of the road, and the state trooper pulled over, and they found him inside, and he'd passed away. So my buddy Rick's gone. So Gina, Rick's sister and my cousin, she got married to a guy, gosh, I'm having trouble with his name. Anyway, he was a baker. He made bread and pastries and cakes and stuff like that. And they lived up in Idaho. Anyway, so I think that's everybody on my mom's side. And, yeah, that's the story. I'm sticking to it. Okay, well, it was really nice talking to you, even though you didn't say much. But that's okay, because maybe someday, and I know it's going to be soon, we'll talk together, one to the other, and have hugs and kisses, because I love you. Okay, buddy, give your mommy a hug and a kiss for me. Tell her I love her. Take care.